the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UPNradio.com.
Welcome to a Special Divisions Operations Deputy District version of Security Guy Radio. We have Chuck. I don't have my J.D. Harold. Paul No-Show-Burso, my very special guest, Wendy Patrick. How are you?
Good. Thanks for
coming
having me.
Now, I joke about that because I did go to law school for a year, and my police department didn't like that, and they wouldn't give me time off to take my my mini baby bar, they called it, right?
Oh, that's tough.
And they said, come into work or you're going to get fired. So I had to do it. So I appreciate your profession.
You can be an armchair lawyer, like I'm an armchair
Well,
psychologist.
I used it. I actually did use it quite a bit.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Because it teaches you how to think logically. Mm-hmm. And in this day and age, we certainly do need that.
Certainly do.
So Wendy L Patrick, JD, PhD, is a San Diego County District Attorney, recently named the 2014 Ronald M. George Public Lawyer of the Year. That's very impressive.
Thank you.
Very impressive. By the California State Bar's Public Law Section. Recognized by your peers as one of the top 10 criminal attorneys in San Diego by the San Diego Daily Transit. And you've done over 150 trials. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
And your current position is assignment of Special Operations Division and handle cases involving threat assessment. And you're also the president, where I know you from, of the San Diego chapter of the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals. And you're here today because you've written a book, and I'm really kind of fascinated by this.
I have, yes.
Red Flags.
Red Flags, and what it really does is sort of uses the 20 years, I hate to reveal my age, the 20 years I have spent in the criminal law arena, first as a defense attorney, and then for the last 17 years as a prosecutor.
You started out as defense. That's interesting.
Anybody that knows me cannot believe that's true, but it is.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you what I think about that. When I was clerking, one of the law professors asked me to help them in law school, and she was a criminal defense attorney. And what I did is I read reports, and I said, well, they did it right. Yeah. Or you read the report and said, you know what? Procedurally, nothing personal, they didn't do it right, and here's what's going on. So I have great respect for that, because if we don't have that side of the division.
Absolutely. You bet.
I was never happy when police got it wrong, because they don't have to. They can take their time. Yeah. They can get it right. And 99% of them do. Once in a while, we all make mistakes.
Right.
So I'm holding nothing against you for being a criminal defense attorney. Believe me, it's something we need in the division. All right. So then after doing criminal defense, you got into the DA's office right away?
Right away. And, the book really is from the 20 years on both sides. It's about manipulators. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs that our society, we are fooled. And as smart as we are, as credentialed and experienced as we get, we are still vulnerable to being fooled. And the book really is about how to separate the dangerous from the desirable when people look good and make us feel good. So there's a lot of the psychology of attraction involved in why we miss red flags.
That's the attraction point is very interesting. I think sociopathic behavior, right, where people appear to be anything but what they are, and they're really good actors at it.
That's right.
But very dangerous.
Yeah.
And one of my conflicts in life is I'm kind of like, you know what, this is for you and this is for your horse. And you kind of know where I stand, right? And that might put people off, but I'm not hiding anything.
What you see is what you get.
I'm not trying to manipulate a situation.
That's right.
Except I'm also told by being that way, sometimes I'm accused of being manipulative because I'm stronger than you are. And so, well, I'm not trying to be. I'm just telling you what my position is. And if you don't like it and you can't stand up to it, is that manipulation? Could be, I suppose.
Well, it could also be a what you see of what you get mentality really is credible to some people because they would see the absence of manipulation as trustworthy.
Yeah, that's true. I do get that. I do get people confiding me with stuff.
When you want an honest answer about something, we all go to those we trust. When you shop for an important outfit, who do you bring?
Yeah, no, that's true.
Your mom or a sibling, right? Not your friends. So, no, there's a lot to be said for somebody that is transparent. See, I would say that's transparency, which ironically gains credibility.
I was often criticized for being too transparent.
Yeah. I can see that too.
In other words, don't ask him because he'll actually tell you what you don't want to hear or the truth, So people, where did you get this? I mean, watching and prosecuting the case is a different perspective than I had, right? So as a policeman, my life depended on making the right assessment about you in the field. I had to know what you were about literally in 5 seconds, and I had to sum up. And cops are really good at that. We can't always articulate why we have that feeling. That's Gavin DeBecker's
That's right,
fear.
the instinct.
Yeah.
Get to fear, yeah.
It works very well. Or if I have to arrest you, I can articulate the facts. So as a prosecutor, you can say, here's the probable cause that led up to why. It's Terry versus Ohio. The guy's standing at a bank. He's got a bag of money with a dollar sign on it and a mask. He's probably
and
a bank robber.
stocking over his head, right?
He's probably a bank robber, right? But not everybody can write that well. You
No.
know, and people get off in those cases sometimes.
Not only is that true, but even professionals like you and I who have been doing it for years might not recognize them if they get out of a high-end Lexus in a 3-piece suit. We're not going to look
That's the
twice
trick.
at them.
That's the trick.
That's what the book's about.
Yeah.
The book is about people who look good. It's not about the stranger in a trench coat loitering in a public restroom or the shady character in an alleyway. It's about the high-end professional that has a respectable job during the day that is involved in less than respectable activity.
Well, that would be a studio
Red flags
executive.
after 5. Oh,
Well, that's what they do. They're cutthroat. It's vicious business.
among other characters.
Yeah, it's a vicious
right,
business.
right.
Now, when you say dangerous, are we talking literally dangerous? In other words, in your prosecution job, are you prosecuting murderers, rapists, high-end crimes against people with these sort of personalities? Okay, that's interesting.
Well, it's both, because I thought you were also going to say people that are manipulative but don't rise to the level of committing a crime. It's about both.
Oh, okay, good point.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
really about, in 20 years of practice, the one question I got more than anything else over the years is, why didn't I see it coming? Why didn't I catch the red flags? And the best answers to that question don't come from the therapist couch. They come from the witness stand. And so for 20 years, I've been the one asking the questions, and I wanted to share the answers. And that's
very
really what the
interesting.
book does.
Okay, all right. So tell us how you got this information from witnesses.
Well, most of the time, it was a series of different qualities that made a bad person look good. Things like power, attractiveness, similarity, familiarity, sometimes, ironically, dangerousness, excitement, all of the different qualities that people have that make other people feel good.
And they're attractive. I mean, sometimes
Very
danger is attractive to people. 'Cause they're
Absolutely.
edgy.
And part of the attraction is one of the biggest qualities is affirmation. In other words, some people have never been made to feel like they're worth something. They're sexy, they're smart, they're intelligent, they're valuable, all the things that make us feel good. Well, if a bad person can feed those vulnerabilities, and we all have them,
Oh,
Chuck.
sure, yeah.
We don't grow out of it.
Right.
We don't because we have degrees after our name, all of a sudden we don't have any areas of vulnerability. All it takes is for a crafty manipulator to talk to you, to get to know you enough to where they can deduce what your particular areas of vulnerability are, and they just cater to those, and they've got you.
Are there some universal catchphrase that people like this use? In other words, here's what I might think. I like women's shoes, by the way. I think women in shoes is a cool thing. You could have 500 shoes.
We call that a fetish.
I think that, well, it's possible, actually, Mr. Jarvis. I guess I spoke too much. But, I have 300 pairs of shoes. Good for you. I think it's great. Because it means to me as a woman, you're paying attention to detail, right? And if you tell any woman, I really like those shoes, you have her attention. You have her attention.
In one way or another, right.
Immediately, right? And that doesn't have to be some kind of a hit or anything like that. It's just you're paying, like you're saying, paying attention to a detail. So with these type of people, manipulators, that's a line somebody might use or think about, right?
Or how about this one? I never thought of that. Wow.
That plays to your intellect.
Well, not only that, but it's the seduction of selectivity is like the way I like to say it.
Okay.
So it's selective attention. There have been plenty of studies. And the thing I want to tell you about this book is it's practical wisdom. So it's anecdotal, then it's bolstered by tons of studies. So it is empirical research.
Oh, good.
It's not a fluff book, and not that anecdotal evidence necessarily means something is not to be trusted, but it's bolstered, it's anchored by well-documented research, a lot of which I did in combination with getting my PhD in theology, but the topic was the psychology of attraction. So when you see don't be daunted by all the footnotes at the end, because it's written and it's very easy to read. It's very easy to understand, and it's got a lot of evidence from my own cases and from things that I've seen. But that's it. It's that idea of selectivity. So they've done a lot of studies on speed dating, for example.
Right.
And they find that if somebody tends to act like they like all their dates the same, when they give you attention, you're really not that impressed. But if they selectively seem to be interested in you, well, you feel like a snowflake. You're unique, you're special, and it's that idea of unique chemistry. That dynamic tends to be seductively attractive.
Now, here's the question I have always found fascinating about people like this. In my mind, they tend to lack empathy. You can recreate sympathy, I believe, through words. Here's some flowers. Your mom died. I'm sorry about that. How do they recreate empathy? Because they don't have that emotional connection. They're emotionally disconnected. Otherwise, they wouldn't be manipulating you.
Well, and that's the psychopathic quality that
you said that. You said that like it's a good thing. No, that's a psychopathic quality.
No, it's a horrible
it's terrible.
thing.
I know.
What the terrible thing is that we can't tell the difference. But I'll also give you this caveat. There are lots of good people that embody all of these characteristics also. That's why the book is about separating the dangerous from the desirable. We might uniquely be attracted to one kind of person or another. That authenticity hopefully is transparent enough for the other person to tell. So that's the interesting thing about these qualities that I talk about in the book is good people have them and bad people have them. If it's a green light, it's about red flags and green lights, could be a match made in heaven.
Well,
but
I'm
if
glad
it's
you
a
say that.
psychopath...
I was afraid you're going to have to arrest me after the show.
Oh.
No, I can walk into a room and talk to 1,000 people and say, hey, what's going on? And I have no problem understanding what people think is important or having empathy or sympathy. And I get feedback like, wow, he was a nice guy or something like that. And I don't use it for evilness. I'm just friendly. But if I wanted to, I know the dynamics of how it works. And I could flip a switch and get something I wanted out of somebody. Now,
That's right.
I did that because as a police officer, I had to persuade you. I was 6'1" and 150 pounds when I got out of the police academy, right? I couldn't push you into jail, handcuff you into jail. I had to talk you into jail. You're a big guy. You want to fight with me? I'd have to agree with that.
That's a great example.
You can't kick my ass. I get that, but I'm going to push the button and say, help, Mr. Wizard, and 25 cops are going to come down here and put you in jail. And then you're using reason and you're appealing to the intellect, like you just said in that other
You're also
example.
using identification, which is one of the things I talk about in the book. Whether it's through similarity, familiarity, affirmation, whatever
we
you're
share
using,
something similar, right?
You're bonding with someone who you want to arrest, you want to interview, whatever it is, to facilitate a smooth arrest, as we say in the business, without incident.
So where do people cross the line on that? I mean, I guess I could become an evil supervillain.
It's your motive. You cross the line with your motive. In other words, is it benevolent or malevolent? That's the difference. If your motive in persuasion, I always like to use the example of persuasion because I, as a lawyer, use persuasion for a living. I argue for a living. I persuade for a living. And you might think, well, persuasion's always the bad thing. It doesn't sound good. But how do you convince your children to eat their vegetables? How do you convince your son or daughter to not play in the street? I mean, it's all about your motive. Motive matters. That's the difference.
That's very interesting. So my motives with a family would be the betterment of the family.
That's right.
But if I'm not happy with the family, my motives would turn into manipulating the family into doing something that's personal for me to get me to do something.
And let me pick up on your example, Chuck, because it's a good one. So you talk about the way you interact with family. I have something in the book that I call a reverse selfie. In other words, you focus on others, not on yourself. Why would you do that? A manipulator would do it to make a wealthy widow feel like the sexiest, most intelligent woman in the world so he can get access to her money. A parent might do that to empower their children.
Which is a good thing.
Yes.
That makes sense.
An employer would do that to empower new employees. In other words, it's outward focus, not self-focus. That's never a bad thing. But you're using the same morally neutral quality either for good or for evil.
Now, you say that they don't always cross into criminal acts.
That's right.
But you started this observation in your criminal prosecution job.
I did.
And for me, I think sometimes they don't rise to criminal acts because people just don't charge them with it or go after with it. But I've seen a lot of examples of this where some of this behavior is just completely over the top.
Oh, sure.
And people let them get away with it because, is it the bullying factor? People will call you a bully for people like this. These aren't really bullies, right? They're a little different, aren't they?
Well, lots of them, not only are they not bullies, they're very charming. In fact, that is one of the words most frequently used to explain somebody who's gotten away with criminal activity for years and flown under the radar.
Yeah, but the act
charming.
itself is, if you look at it and take it out and say, look, let's look at the behavior by itself. It's bullying in a nice way because I'm pushing you around and I'm forcing you to do something,
and you don't
realize
know
it.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't realize it.
Instead of the frontal attack, which
yeah.
is easier to kind of ward off and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
Well, it's frenemies with benefits. Okay, it's somebody who is getting you to do what they want, and you don't even realize why you're doing it. They're buttering you up, killing you with flattery, and in the process, they're getting exactly what they want from you. Whether it's making connections, maybe they're climbing the corporate ladder. And you look at somebody's attentions when you first meet them. In other words, are they trying to beat a path to the bedroom or the boardroom?
Right.
What can you do for them?
Well, you see this in business, especially at the studios. A lot of talented people, right?
Yeah.
Studios don't hire people that are dummies. They hire the best they can for the business. And there's a lot of competition to be smarter, better, more creative, that kind of thing, artistic. And then there's the business side of the people. So the business people that run it aren't necessarily the creative people, but they got to watch the money. So there's a big conflict in those two things. And boy, everybody wants your job.
Oh, sure.
And they don't just come up and do a frontal on you. They come around the back and, do
you
nasty
got to keep your
emails
back
about
against the wall, right?
Yeah. Now,
exactly.
have you ever studied John Burns' stuff, aggression management? So John Burns has been doing this about 25 years. It's kind of similar to what you're talking about. He identifies the aggression part of these people, right? So the guys that's the clam, the manipulator, the bulldozer sort of personality, that's all manipulation. If I'm your boss and ask you to do something and you decide I'm going to stop talking and I walk away from the group and I don't talk to the group anymore, that's high manipulation. And he suggested if you let those people go and don't try to correct them or bring them back into the group very early, those are the guys that become Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
That kid was ostracized, he was made fun of and so on. Not an excuse, but a cause.
Right.
So how do you differentiate the violent part of this personality? How can you identify the violent component? Because not everybody's going to be violent. They might just steal your money and say, see you later, which is a form of violence, but it's not going to kill you.
Well,
it's aggression, I say, not violence. It's aggression.
You bring up an interesting point because there are tons of books out there that teach you how to identify outwardly toxic, aggressive people. Right. This book, on the other hand, and this is why I wrote it to sort of fill a gap, is to identify people that make you feel good. So in other words, in your example, somebody that is using overt manipulation makes you feel anxious or bad or uncomfortable, that wouldn't be the kind of person that would fall into sort of the categories of people that my book is designed to detect. It would more be the person that you're looking for reasons to spend more time with.
So you're going to like all these people in your book.
Yes.
Interesting. All right.
It's 10 reasons that bad looks good. That's the whole premise.
See, I'm always suspicious when some woman approaches me and says, oh, hey, I like you and you're good looking. And I go, no. What's going on
What
here?
do you want? Isn't that what we say, Chuck?
Well, the first thing I say,
want?
because I know objectively I'm not good looking. I have a nice personality, right? Oh. But I'm not Tom Cruise or anybody. I get it. That's fine. But when somebody does that, I immediately say, that's the wrong line for me. You can say, boy, you're funny. I know I'm funny. You can say, you're half smart. I'll get that. But say, oh, you're good looking. I go, no, wait a minute. But that's an appeal.
What would be,
it's a line, right?
What would be the crack in the armor for you, though, Chuck? You don't have to reveal it on air. But think to yourself. There's probably something, because for all of us there is. For some people,
I don't know, it's a tough
intelligence, right? Everything's perfect. But whether it's intelligence, looks, success, I mean, think of all the qualities.
I don't fall for, it's probably because I'm a cop. I'm maybe a little more wise to it. I don't fall for you look good or good looking because objectively, I think I'm okay. I'm nothing great, right? So that's a little over the top. If you say you're funny, I'll say, I know I make people laugh, so you're not impressing me with that observation. Mm-hmm. So I'm not over the top impressed with your insight on that one. Or
how about intelligence?
I think I'm average intelligence, but I pay attention more than most people, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure you could grab me with some kind of compliment that I didn't think was.
Well, then you don't need to read the book.
No, but you know what might grab me would be. No, but with respect to that,
yeah?
I think what might grab me might be an appeal to the way I think or something, not what I know, the process.
Right.
That might appeal to me.
A crafty manipulator talking to you or listening to the show would be able to figure that out.
My thinking process, because I think a lot differently than most people. Yeah, so
and
that's
they'd
interesting.
be able to appeal to that because. Okay. As much as we like to say that we are able, I mean, it's like when lawyers become judges. They say, gosh, my jokes suddenly became hilarious overnight. I'm ready for open mic night at the comedy store.
They want to please the judge. Yeah, interesting.
Or if somebody in politics gets elected, suddenly they are the funniest, the smartest. So these types of things, obviously, we like to say that we think that we're skeptical and distrust, but verify, as they say now in politics. But all of us have something that makes us feel good. It's like, have you ever had somebody give you a compliment that you've passed on to your spouse or a family member? So-and-so said this to me, it made me feel really
I
good.
do that. So when people write me about the show and say that was a funny show, I like the show, that was interesting, I like those compliments.
Yeah.
Because it makes me think I'm doing good work, and I want to try to do good work. And when somebody criticizes me, I still know I'm doing good work because I pissed you off, and that's good. No, that's good too, because you're listening. And if you weren't listening and not saying you're pissed off, I'd be sad, right? Because at least you're listening. Now, let's talk about a politician, because I don't believe anybody in politics. Politics is not governing. It's not a verb. It's just a noun. It's a thing. It's a state of being. And they're all a bunch of liars to me, every one of them. When I was a cop, and by the way, I like Bill Clinton. Personally, I think he's a likable guy, right?
Charismatic.
And I wouldn't vote for him. And I told people when he was getting elected, I said, if I stopped him for a traffic stop, I'd find something to take him to jail for. Because I knew he was a pathological liar. I could just tell he's a liar. But he's a nice liar, right? He's nice about it. Are politicians these sort of personalities?
Yeah, we call this the optics of politics. And
Okay.
I've been talking a lot about this lately.
Because they seem bad at it.
Well, some are and some aren't.
what I'm
And
saying?
that's what's interesting about analyzing the body language after a debate. I mean, some of these politicians, they roll into town like rock stars in limos, and they give these speeches, and there's all this applause. But you got to think to yourself, if you were handed a transcript of that speech
Right.
without the smooth oration and standing ovation, would
Nothing
you
there.
be as impressed?
It's empty.
No.
Most of the
probably
time it's
not.
empty. I mean, people like Reagan might be an exception, or actually Clinton was a good speech giver. You know, I disagree with the politics, but he was compelling to a degree.
But that gives you an example. I mean, it's a perfect example of the qualities in the book of how there's so much more involved as to why we are impressed with other people. That, by the way, is an example of both power and credibility, which are two of the qualities that make bad people look good.
So bad people that look good in politics is going to translate into what sort of personality?
Well, what it translates into is to an ability that we have to take a closer look, and that's where the flag areas come in. The book talks about 4 areas: focus, lifestyle, association, and goals.
So let's go over each one of those. Let's talk about focus.
Focus is the other person's focus, the person you're analyzing. In other words, what captures their attention?
Oh, me as the manipulator, I'm focusing on you to
Exactly.
manipulate you.
So
Okay, right.
if I were giving this, as I often do, talk to a women's group, I would say, hey, on a first date, is the interest your body, your brains, or the ball game? You have to look at what is somebody interested in.
Yeah.
Lifestyle, sometimes this is the red flags after 5. In other words, what do they do? Where do they go when you don't see them? Many of us have no idea what our coworkers do after hours. I like to say if you stand at an office building at 5 o'clock, you might think the fire alarm went off. Everybody streams out at 5. But you know what that shows? They're going on to their life, the good part of their life. Where do they go? Do they go to the gym, the bar, the movies? I mean, the possibilities are endless.
That's much more telling.
That's much more telling than what they do during the workday when you see them.
Right.
The A is for associations, birds of a feather. Our associations tell a lot about us. You also don't necessarily see that in the workplace.
No.
And then, of course, G is for goals. And think about it. If you knew what somebody wished for when they saw a falling star or what they pray for at night, how much more would you learn about them than what you can just see on the surface?
And so a manipulator is going to take these 4 points and try to gather that information
Perhaps,
to
but
hit buttons to say, hey,
Perhaps, but the book really is about us, the good people, using those 4 areas to read manipulators.
Oh, read
to
backwards.
read the person
Oh, yes.
beneath the persona. But it can go both ways.
Right.
Everybody knows this. But it's really a way to heighten, to enhance what we already know to do. Let's face it, most of us don't want to trade in our reading glasses for rose-colored glasses. We don't want to do that. We want to remain objective, which is why one of the points I make in the book is maximize first impressions when you're your most objective. But we all slide down the road towards subjectivity when somebody's making us feel good. It's the morphine drip of the sort of emotional intoxication that we get
Right.
when somebody is catering to our emotional needs. Happens to all of us.
See, I go through life and I'm nice to 99% of the people, right? Because I like people. I like talking to people. I like striking up conversations. Jarvis and I were best friends on Facebook in 2 hours, Mr. Jarvis? Literally. Hey, I walk in here, start a show, Facebook, right?
Right.
And I'm not shallow. I mean, I like people, right? I'm not using them because I'm going to get my radio show bigger because
Right.
nobody listens anyway. So it's just like friends, right? But I think what drives all that, in my mind, is that people want to be loved. That's the bottom line. They want to be liked and loved. That's it. Everybody does. Even
That's
the guy
right.
that's a complete a-hole that nobody really wants to deal with, he's grouchy because probably nobody gives him a hug. I really believe that.
And the person at the very top of the food chain, we tend to forget this. Like when somebody has achieved success and riches, that somehow they've lost all vulnerability. They haven't.
No.
They still have insecurities.
That's the one thread that connects everybody.
Yes, all of us.
And so if you know how to play on that, you can get a lot of things out of people. And it's
That's right.
sad because that's our, we're a social what's the word? Symbiotic. We have to.
That's right.
We don't live on Gilligan's Island by ourselves. Okay?
We don't. We live in community. We need people. And what's
Right.
also sad is that some people are married to each other and don't know what the other person's areas of vulnerability are.
Yeah.
And that's why I said this whole book is about red flags that are also green lights.
How would you apply this to a marriage? These
Well,
red
to
flags?
a marriage,
Let's talk about it.
you would have to use all of those areas with benevolence. In other words, you'd have to pay attention enough to know what your spouse wants and needs. What do they value most? In other words, would your reassurance of their physical appearance, their intellect, their ability to problem solve, their ability to make everybody laugh, their care for other people. I could go on, but everybody has things about them that they value, that they cherish, they love hearing about, that they need reassurance about, that they matter, their ideas matter, their emotions matter. That's why I say the reverse selfie is a great way to enhance your relationships, to focus on your partner and what he or she needs, not to care about yourself and whether or not you're getting your needs met. It is amazing what that can do for any relationship. It really is.
Now, I had a divorce case years ago we worked on, and the profile of the wife was something like this. Married the husband, just wanted to get married. He was a good provider.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't a gold digger per se, just wanted some form of security that was, not crazy or something like that. Never really loved the guy, but, played the role of the good wife for years and years and years, and, had sex on cue, and that was all okay. And the bottom line during the depot was, well, so what? Well, I provided him things, but you weren't connected emotionally, and you had a boyfriend on the side, and what was it? What?
There's an example.
It was like this withdrawn emotion. It was like,
That's
I don't
right.
care. And to me, that's manipulation. That's dangerous. And what I think about people like this, I think rising to a criminal level, I'm not going to say it's the lesser of the two evils, but it can be less damaging. Now, if I kill you, that's a bad thing, but it's all over with, right? But if I manipulate you my entire life,
Yeah.
and I psychologically just wear you out, and you finally you wake up one day and say, oh my God, this whole thing has been a manipulation, that's devastating. That would just ruin people's lives.
There's a chapter in the book that deals with that. It's called the arm charmer is the example. There are some people that are not interested, and these people are ego predators, by the way.
Yeah.
So they know their role. And again, we don't want to use the word gold digger. That sounds bad. Let's just say that there are some people that use other people to obtain things that they couldn't obtain on their own.
That's right.
And provide a service. And we can't just say it's friends with benefits, because they're sometimes marriage partners, lifetime partners. Sometimes it's long-term relationships that are almost business arrangements.
Yeah,
Marriage is
that's what
a
it seemed like.
convenience.
Right.
And that's why if you look at these 10 areas, that person isn't satisfying the area, for example, familiarity, similarity, bonding, identification. They're not bonding.
No, not bonding.
And
right.
we talked about psychopathic qualities. Psychopaths don't bond.
Right.
A lot of narcissists don't bond. In other words, they're not interested in you, but how you enhance their
Them.
image.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very interesting. So what's some of the applications we might use in everyday life on this?
Well, some of the applications are when you have a relationship like this, you've got to look below the surface. You've got to look at the person behind the persona.
Well, when you have a relationship like this,
A relationship.
would you recommend that I'm on Tinder and I'm looking at a profile and all the profiles are, guys with a tiger, or their shirts off, or they're on a boat with a fish, or and you go, that all looks the same. That can't be real, right? Are they trying to put some image on? Who has a tiger and a fish in a boat? Are you suggesting at the early levels you start analyzing that behavior as you get into the relationship?
Especially when you've met online. Even if you're just looking at somebody's profile
everything's fake online.
Well,
Everything's
well,
fake.
online is where we exaggerate strengths, downplay weaknesses, and flat out lie about
Yeah,
numbers,
it's easy
height,
to lie.
weight, age. Easy. When you begin to meet people in person, you obviously make all those comparisons. But, with the advent of the internet, we have so many ways to trust but verify. And, this book is not meant to make people paranoid. And that's really another thing I want to focus on is we're going to be wrong sometimes. Even a law enforcement professional like
sure.
yourself. I
Yeah.
mean, over all those years, sometimes people can pull one over on us. Nobody's perfect.
Oh, yeah. And you get really angry about it when it happens.
Well, you can't believe it happens because that means you've met a really crafty manipulator.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
But the book really is just about tools that can enhance your natural ability, your natural instinct to be able to separate the good from the bad.
Why do you think people disregard their instinct, and they're grabbing a back
because
a
they
hair
are
in the back of your neck.
loving. Well, in the kinds of people that I write about in the book is because they're loving the relationship. There is
So they're
nothing,
that good. They can eliminate that little thing in the back of your neck that says, "Wait a minute, something's wrong."
They can
All
because
right.
sometimes they didn't even feel that to begin with.
That's what I'm saying, right?
Sometimes what should be sounding like alarm bells are muted to the pleasant tinkling of wind chimes.
Interesting.
There's nothing like seeing a crime victim's face light up as he or she explains how good the manipulator made them feel. That's how they got into the relationship to begin with. They were the only person that made them feel worth spending time with. The only person that recognized the unique qualities they had. The only person that recognized the inner beauty, whatever it is. And remember that some people are more vulnerable because they're not used to receiving this kind of flattery, this affirmation.
Right. Do you think people like to seek out those sort of people and kind of figure out?
Absolutely, absolutely. But ironically, Chuck, sometimes people that seem to have it all are also vulnerable because somebody gets to know them. They recognize that, a woman that looks like $1 million, looks like she's ready for the runway, is still somehow insecure about her appearance.
Oh,
or,
sure.
Or about her intellect
or they don't have
or something.
they don't have a close relationship. They want
That's
what everybody
right.
else wants. They want a good relationship, and they
Same
achieve
thing with the guys.
all kinds of other success, but they never had the spouse.
That's right.
They traded.
Everybody
it.
has something.
Yeah.
That's right.
So if I'm online looking at something, we can make up all kinds of personas, right? It's easy to do.
Oh, very easy online.
And what I know from looking at the aggressive behavior, we're trying to recognize cognitive aggression. Primal aggression, yelling, screaming, that's easy to deal with.
Very easy to
Hit
recognize.
you over the head with a stick, put the handcuffs on, you're gone. Calm down, take a nice pill, whatever. But cognitive people are the plotters, schemers. They're going to get you but when you're not looking. Very similar to this type of personality. Here's what I don't get. We know that about only 7% of what we learn comes from words. And it's you sitting, which is why we talked about you coming in the studio, right?
Yeah.
Because I can read on your cues your body language.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're enthusiastic, and I know you're excited about this book, and that means you're a true believer, and you believe what you're saying, and therefore it lends credibility to it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas online, I'm just reading the, Overlooking Red Flags, professional setting. That's all. It sounds
cold record, as we say in
Yeah.
the law. That's right.
So how do these people get past that? They can say nice shoes all they want, but if you're paying attention on the victim side, the words don't. And I've seen people like this. The words don't match to me. They don't ring genuine and true. How do they overcome that? I mean,
we call that counterintuition, when the optics don't match the topics.
Right.
That is one of the best ways. When the mannerisms don't match the message, that is one of the best ways that we are able to raise our antenna.
So
if
give
we're
some
paying
examples
attention.
of that. How can we get that?
I'll give you a great example that illustrates this phenomena. This would be if you were watching television and there would be a newscaster who is describing a terrible tragedy with a smile on her face.
No, I've seen that kind of thing.
And we do see that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That raises you talk about raising the hair on the back of your neck. This would be something Gavin Becker would probably talk about. There's a fearfulness, an instinctive fear of somebody that presents that cognitive mismatch. So too with psychopaths, they are able, their emotions don't match the message. They can't because they lack what most of us have. Empathy, sympathy, the ability to bond, we could go on and on. But that kind of thing we can recognize if we're paying attention.
Now,
and one of the tips I got to tell you about when a psychopath smiles, not everybody, there's exceptions to every rule. They don't often smile with their eyes. Look at somebody's eyes when they smile, because remember, a smile is an honest reflection of an emotion.
You know what
if
the
it's
number one
real.
thing I get back from people is that I have twinkly eyes.
Okay,
They
and
say
your
that
eyes
all the
twinkle
time.
because it's an authentic smile.
Because I'm
Yes.
happy. I think that's
exactly
why.
right.
I think
That's a
the
great
idea.
example.
So yeah, eyes tell a lot. I think that's very underlooked.
Windows to the soul. It's
very
true.
interesting. All right, so if we're going to look at somebody's behavior like that, I'm trying to make this a practical exercise. So I'm going to tell Susie Q, you met some guy online. He's got the tiger, the big pecs, the shirt off, the fishing trip. He's a great guy. And you meet him in person. What are they going to be looking for to match that? And by the way, he might be Ernest Hemingway in
That's
real
right.
life. It's
That's
possible,
for
right?
sure.
But how would you match that with the body language? Because if they're going to, here's what I get suspicious of. We talked about briefly at the beginning of the show. People that throw me compliments when they don't know me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, since I'm quasi-public, like you're a quasi-public persona, right? I allow a certain degree of that, a nice compliment, an email, that was a great show, thanks a lot, I learned something, that's fine. But when they're what I call over-familiar with me, I teach this to my kids all the time. Never let somebody become over-familiar. Hey, how you
Good
doing?
advice.
What's going on? Let me give you a hug. Dude, you met me like 30 seconds ago.
Yeah.
I waited what was it, 3 minutes to give you a hug, Mr. Jarvis? I think it was. It was appropriate time, Brent.
That's enough.
Before we became Facebook besties, all right? So you do have to kind of understand that over-familiarization, I call it not logical. Mm-hmm. Why would you want to hug me and touch me and tell me I'm great when you don't even know me?
I'll give you an example.
That's
and there's an example in the book. I call it the open book. I actually call it the open nook because we're in the millennium. Everything's online.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But this is the person that intentionally really strives for over-familiarity. Why? Because of the reciprocity effect. When somebody, think about it. I mean, there's a great example in the book about the old strangers on a train phenomena, where back in the day when you couldn't look somebody up on LinkedIn 5 seconds after you met them, you never thought you were going to see somebody again, so you felt comfortable telling your life story.
Well, that's true.
No longer. Now it is the phenomena of over-familiarity and over-disclosure often prompts reciprocity. You just told me a lot about you. You seem to be very familiar with me. I'm pressured to reciprocate in some
Here's my home
fashion.
address and my social security number.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But
I can
that
see
is
that.
one of, and again, we like to think that we're not susceptible to that, but subconsciously because you mentioned earlier, we're human beings. I mean, there's social proof phenomena. We tend to reciprocate. There's a symbiotic relationship that can be formed if we're not paying attention. Studies have shown that simply dressing alike, wearing the same wristwatch, incidental similarity tends to prompt, for example, compliance with requests, wanting to help another person. So that is why some manipulators intentionally use this kind of over-familiarity, because sometimes it works.
I think it works a lot.
It does.
And I don't get it because it doesn't really work on me. It's a first red flag. Now, if people are, I find that people tend to tell me a lot of things I don't want to know. Okay, I don't know. I'm insipid
Honest
looking
feedback?
or something. Well, no, I'm not sure they're seeking feedback. I think they probably feel that I'm not going to betray them and I'm not going to tell anybody about it, and I'm going to listen, right? Because I got to be able to listen in this profession, or I wouldn't have a profession. I've never felt in those situations that was manipulative. I thought people felt a genuine draw that somebody's going to actually pay attention and gives a crap and wants to help them if I can, right?
You have a demeanor that is very approachable, and that is why you likely have so many people approaching you.
Am I vulnerable with that personality?
And
to a manipulator? Or people like that stay away from me?
People like that would probably find an easier target because your
Okay.
approachability also exudes confidence. That's not necessarily what a manipulator is looking for.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, you don't have as much for them to work with as somebody that is projecting insecurity, for example, which you don't. So that is a quality that not only draws the good people, but sometimes keeps the bad people at bay.
That's a good point.
It is.
And I have been told on at times, doing different things or business deals or something, like, go on that and give a speech or something. And people come up to me and says, "Oh my God, I've never heard that story before. That's great, and thanks. And you touched me with this story, and I didn't think about that. And I feel good about that.
Yeah.
But I'm always kind of amazed by it because I don't know. I just look at myself as just being me, and why isn't everybody else like that? And then when I see somebody that's manipulating somebody, I get really angry about it because I go, that's not fair. You shouldn't be preying on people that are being kind to you.
That's right.
Right now, if somebody's being mean to you, I'm all for manipulation, right? I'm on the opposite side, right? I will eviscerate you if you do something bad to me.
That's right.
That's what the opposite side you get.
But your example is a really good example of how you tell the genuine from the disingenuous. Because a stranger that hears you give a speech and comes up and gives you a compliment, what do they want from you?
No, that's venue appropriate.
Nothing.
It's
That's
situational
right.
appropriate,
Absolutely.
right? I'm in a venue where I'm talking. You would expect a feedback. I might get people to say you were terrible, right? That's okay. But I always look at context.
That's
and
right.
I think a lot of these people drop things out of context, and people don't pick up on that. Mm-hmm. I just met you. What are you asking me for my address for? That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But we like each other and we're buddies. No, but the context is I don't know you.
That's right.
Not the context that I want to know you. Not the context that I think you're hot and I want to go out with you. The facts are we just met 5 minutes ago, and I'm not giving you anything.
What's scary about that, Chuck, is online we call people like those, do we call them cyberstalkers? No. Friends, fans, and followers. In other words, the more, the merrier.
No, that's true.
Young people as an example, because as a prosecutor, I worry terribly about what young people are doing online.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
I mean, they post something and they keep going back to the page to see how many likes and favorites and all of that they have. Let's face it, people don't post to read their own content. They're seeking attention because that's
a weird thing, isn't
the
it?
definition
Yeah.
of success.
Yeah.
But there's a line at which focus becomes fixation. So somebody doesn't even need to ask you for your address or this or that because they can find it online because young people
that's true.
bear all.
Yeah, that's
Facebook
true.
is the confessional of the new millennium.
I was talking to Kelly Cahill she has an online dating service, and she's trying to use biometrics to verify identities online. So you know that that's a real guy. And we were doing some research. And I did some research on these dating sites. And, like, for example, Tinder uses your Facebook, right? And the idea was, well, if you're all on Facebook and part of the Facebook community, we're all buddies. And therefore, there's some familiarity that's a little safer than some guy with a fake persona because Facebook has already established your identity, so they think.
So they think.
Right? And then, you click and you say, okay, there's a person. And there's something about a match. So if I say I like you, that doesn't matter. You don't know that unless you liked me back. And that might be a year from now, right? Or something like that. And the danger that creates is, since there's that blind like, right? Blind like we don't know we're doing it. There's an assumption that this must be something real and better because, we both liked each other simultaneously and there's some kismet there, some kind of nonsense.
Right.
Except if you're a manipulator, all you got to do is like every single photograph, and mathematically, you're going to find somebody that likes you back. That's just math.
What people do. Lots of people do that.
And then I type in Wendy, and on your picture, you have you in front of a courthouse, and I type in Wendy, San Diego, law, and then I find your Facebook page because those are keywords in your Facebook page. So stuff like this is dangerous, and it can be done.
But here's how you get around that. Again, there's that study on speed dating. If that person does it to everyone, like you said, that's a great example. They like everyone.
Right.
Suddenly, I am not going to feel special. There's going to be no seduction of selectivity because you didn't select me. You selected everybody. You
so you won't be as much of a victim if they use that technique?
I won't be as attracted to somebody who did that. That's what the research shows is we are sometimes irresistibly attracted to somebody that is uniquely focused on us. That makes us feel warm and glowing.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because most people aren't used to feeling that way.
Right.
Even people that are really wildly successful, they're popular, they aren't used to that unique selectivity. And people that aren't used to getting that kind of attention to begin with are really vulnerable.
You think this is a new phenomenon?
No, absolutely not. And that's
all right.
That's the thing is this phenomena is used in different professions. It's used legitimately and illegitimately. It's used by advertisers. It's used in
that part I get.
Courtship.
See, but in courtship, the old school was when we didn't even have cell phones, if you might remember that day.
I don't remember those
Not too
days.
long ago.
No, I'm too young to remember that.
Mr. Young Jarvis has no idea about that. Always had a cell phone. But, you met somebody, probably, because you didn't, get online and find them.
Yeah.
You didn't,
That's right.
And you asked them out, and then you got a phone number, and they probably weren't home when you called, and there probably wasn't an answer machine, and this was a slow process. I think there's a tendency in our society to have instant gratification now.
Oh, sure.
And now we speed the process up, and since we can't see, and since it's on a computer, just like my kids think anything on a TV is legitimate, right? You and I don't, or I don't anyway, because my TV was black and white when I grew up, and it was like, oh, what is that? It's not real. And now you can't tell that it's not real, right? So I have a little suspicion of a TV set, but people that are younger are like, oh, it's online, it must be real.
Right.
And I think it accelerates that process, and I think it lends itself to an environment where it's easier to do for people. And I think people figure out this stuff without being a psychopath. They just figure it out themselves and get it.
Here's what's scary about that, Chuck, is studies show that people form relationships faster online in many cases. And
that's what I thought.
They disclose more quickly.
That's why it's bizarre to me. Why is that?
Well, there's something on the radio just within this last week about classes to help teenagers socialize offline.
Yeah, no, it's true.
I mean, think about it. Is that a sign of the times or what? They're so used to forming relationships online that there's some people believe, I don't know if I buy all of this, but they might lack some of the social skills that you and I have from growing up in an era
that's completely
where you
true.
had to interact offline.
I think this is part of the problem with our police officers nowadays. The young ones. I went to the police academy in November, and I got recertified after 30 years. And a lot of, I was one of the older guys in there. I was a little sore, but I did it.
Hey, you did it.
Got
Good
it all
for
done.
you.
Yeah, still remember the law. All the law came back. All the hand techniques.
Some of the laws are very new nowadays.
There
aren't
were
they?
some new. Well, there's a good one. Good one was if you pull a phone out of a wall during domestic violence, it's a felony. I think that's a great law.
Yeah, sure is.
But the great law, the law that's not a great law is if I rob you and you have less than $900 with a gun, now it's not a felony. That bothers me a little bit.
Oh,
but that's a different story.
Things
so anyway,
change every year.
These guys in the academy, it's like, hey, class is over, let's go get a beer. No, go back to my room, and they're on their phone, and these guys are sitting in class on their phone, and I want to talk because I had a computer in 1984. I live and breathe this stuff. I love it, right?
Yeah.
But I know when it's appropriate, and I find that in some of the scenarios we see in the media nowadays, I'm seeing that police officers, politicians, whatever you want to call it, are not taking that next step to try to communicate, discuss.
Yes.
It goes from, can I see your driver's license, please? Well, I know you can't. Taser. All right. Where's the verbal judo in the middle, right? Because they're not trained in that.
Another great book.
Yeah, and I think that there is something really true about this lack of ability to communicate. So if I like you on some kind of Facebook page, an assumption is this person is crazy about me. And these crazy people think, oh, they like me, so I'm gonna like them back, and I'm gonna start following them and talking to them. It's a really odd phenomenon.
And that's the way some of these relationships develop. It is so flattering.
Almost on both sides, really, in a way.
Absolutely, it can be on both sides. But that is the way some of these relationships develop. But, think about it. When you log on your computer and you have a new follower on Twitter, lots of people like that.
I get 30 a day.
Then you've
30,
got,
40 a day.
Think about it. So that's 30 or 40 new people that found
Say,
you
I like you.
interesting enough.
I know, it's an interesting feeling.
But it's a good feeling, too.
Well,
I guess it depends on what their
some of
avatars
my
and tabs.
followers-
I was going to say, it depends on who they are and what they look like.
I think some of these may even shock
Or
Mr.
what,
Jarvis. some of these
or what
followers.
avatar they chose.
Oh, yeah.
Is it an anarchy symbol or a bulldog?
Oh, there's some crazy stuff out there. People pick up.
I know there is.
But my currency is content, right? And so I try to make a living by producing interesting content. And then if people like it, that's my payback, so to speak.
But
So
your personality is part of that content. It's brand management.
that's true.
And personality is a big part. Likability is another thing and one of the examples I like to give is the speeder who always gets a warning. I'll give you that example because you're a career law enforcement officer. Have you ever given somebody a warning when they were speeding?
half of my tickets were warnings.
Why did they get a warning?
Because they were nice.
Yes.
It's no secret. I'll tell everybody right now. If you don't want to get a ticket, don't be an asshole to a
the
policeman.
lure of
the bottom line.
likability.
Yeah,
that's
that's it.
right. There are so many examples in politics and personal life and education and employment that people that are genuinely nice get away with all kinds of things that they probably shouldn't half the time. But that is that's that element of attraction. Attraction isn't just physical. It's physical, it's social, it's dynamic. And when people are just genuinely likable, you want to do good things for them. You want to make them happy.
So how can manipulators be likable? Well, see, I'm suspicious.
Oh, that's easy.
No, see, but I'm suspicious because I kind of go, wait a minute, that doesn't seem right. I'm not a good guy to look at that and be fooled, per se. Not that I couldn't be fooled, because I've been fooled. There's no doubt about it.
We all have.
Yeah. But as a general statement, I would say that's not time appropriate. That's not relationship appropriate. It's not distance appropriate. There are all kinds of measures you can say it's not appropriate. Not like a bad inappropriate or weird, just not normal social interaction,
Well,
right?
that wouldn't be a good manipulator, because if it's obviously inappropriate, then that's not somebody that's going to be successful.
Okay, but
those are the guys we're going to catch.
Yeah, but see, here's what I think people are failing on. There used to be a book in my grandmother's bookhouse called the Vogue Book of Etiquette, written in 1928. And it's what fork to use and what color dress to wear. I mean, you read it and you go, well, that's kind of really formal and interesting. But you know what? Mores and expectations are what keeps society together.
That's right.
If I don't know what you're going to do right now, I wouldn't have you on my show.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't do it.
Right. Oh,
I can't take a chance,
you're
right?
here, yeah.
So those are things that are underrated.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, if you go online and somebody likes and I've had this happen, by the way, people like my Facebook page, my Security Guy Radio, shameless plug, securityguyradio.com. They like that page, and then they go to my personal Facebook page. Now, here's what it tells me. A, I told you what my business Facebook page was. You have to go hunt to find me, because I only have my friends of my friends join my Facebook page. So now that tells me you went out of my way to like me personally.
Right.
You don't really know me. What do you care about me personally? Because I got a public page for that, right?
Right.
Red flag to me.
Totally.
That's a total red flag.
Oh, yeah.
Most people would say, "Oh, wow, they're stalking
They
me."
went
That's
through all
kinda
that
fun.
trouble. Yeah.
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 So to me, that's not nice behavior to me.
It's also suspicious behavior.
To me, it is, but I think most people would be flattered by it, like you said.
Well, it seems like, and I don't want to pick on the younger generation. They're a brilliant generation. They're going to, do fabulous things in the world. But
They can't even make change.
Hold on. Here's the
right, go
caveat
ahead.
that's coming. They have been raised in a society where this is the definition of success. So they don't have the same suspicions that you and I do.
Oh,
Think about it.
I didn't think about that.
When somebody gets a new Twitter follower, I've worked with women that have a new Twitter follower with a tagline that would send somebody through the roof worrying, why would you ever pick such a freaky, creepy tag?
Yeah.
And they're They're flattered. Sounds like a superhero, sometimes they'll say. So when you don't have that fear, you don't have any skepticism. It's almost...
Oh, that's a big key.
Yeah.
No skepticism.
And if you don't, and it's in the book I talk about the process of becoming suspicious, because it's harder cognitively to become suspicious than to take somebody at face value. This is the truthfulness bias. It's easier for us to believe that somebody is telling the truth than to find reasons to become suspicious. Nobody wants to go through
It is
mental
easier.
gymnastics of that.
And, people believe, and as I believe, by the way, and I know there's a percentage of the population that's evil. I know what evil is. I've looked at evil.
I'll bet
Evil has
you
tried
have.
to kill me. So don't try to convince me there's no such thing as evil, all right? On the other side, since I know that, I know for a fact that a lot of my liberal friends don't know, that 99.9% of the people in the world are good.
That's right.
They're not
They sure
crazy conservatives. They're not crazy, whatever you want to say
I'm
about
so glad
them.
you brought that up. That's
Yeah,
true.
It's really, and here's why. If it wasn't that way, we would be in the shit. The whole world would be in chaos right now, okay? The only reason everybody's safe, and I talk about this in the show all the time, is because of personal safety. You and I sit next to each other behaving keeps the world safe.
That's right.
And if we all decide to misbehave, there's nothing any government in the world could do about it, right? So that's the proof, right? But it's interesting you're going to say that if there's not a standard anymore to rely on because of the younger generation, to them that's acceptable behavior. And I can't get my head around that, though.
And that's why we worry so much about that generation, is they don't have a problem over disclosing the kind of details that predators need to locate them offline. That's one of the big differences. Same age peers sometimes enjoy an eternal cyberspace relationship, not the bad guys. The predators are looking, their goal is to facilitate an off-site meeting. An offline meeting for the purposes usually of sexual exploitation. So their techniques are
You think that's the number one
different.
reason mostly?
The number one reason.
Sexual exploitation is one of the
Well,
main
that's
drivers
what
of these
the people I prosecute,
Yeah.
Unless it's a financial heist. But if it's a sexual predator, they're not just looking. They are looking with the goal of meeting that person, that young person, offline. That's also, by the way, why they don't always misrepresent their age. You can't pretend to be a 12-year-old and then walk through the door looking like a 45-year-old.
Yeah, that's true.
But once the predator has cultivated a relationship of trust through using these 10 reasons bad looks good, then they're able to disclose their true age because they've already forged that bond. They already look and feel so good to that
And
person.
people forgive you.
People forgive you,
Because
and they
people-
understand why you did it.
Yeah, they don't like people. People do not like to think badly of others, right?
That's
Because
right.
we all know that most of the world is good. And so I don't want to think that guy's bad. I don't want to say anything. What if I'm wrong?
Give them the benefit of the doubt.
And that's right. And they'll do more to avoid pain than seek pleasure. So if it's painful for me to challenge you, I'm not going to do that. And if I accept your compliment and say fine, then that's easy, like you just said.
You want to resolve the cognitive dissonance in a way that's easy and in a way that preserves the relationship if
Yeah.
somebody's making you feel that
We had a
way.
guy at one of the studios. This is an unbelievable story. So he talked about manipulation. He worked in advertising, and he knew what he was doing. He was a legitimate part of the company. And he decided his scam was he was going to solicit. I can't even tell this with a straight face. It's so bizarre. He wanted, he had a foot fetish, right? So he wanted young girls to mail him. Well, first of all, he wanted young girls to wear their pantyhose for a week, right? And then mail them to him. The reason was because it creates an impression. I don't wear pantyhose, by the way, but supposedly I've been told it would create an impression in the bottom of the pantyhose, like a stretch it out or something. He was going to use this as a model to make a foot model because it was going to be for a,
You can't make this stuff up.
yeah, I know. It was going to be for some kind of a commercial for a tennis shoe, like it was for Nike or something like that, right? And so I can't tell you how many 14, 15-year-old girls did this.
Oh, boy.
And mailed this stuff to the guy, right? And he was saving pantyhose and things. And eventually he escalated to, well, we got to meet because, I'm going to have to take a real cast of your foot to make this. We're going to make a custom shoe for you,
Right.
and you're going to be on a Nike commercial.
Right.
And these girls are just enamored by this. I'm like, oh, my God, this is great. Some smart mom in Texas calls me up one day and says, yeah, Mr. Harold, I got my daughter here, and I got some letter from some guy named Brad, and he wants my daughter to mail the pantyhose. What the hell's going on down there?
Oh, wow.
And that blew the whole thing open, and the
Yeah.
guy was very clever covering everything up. And what we caught him, how we caught him was he met one of these people that were 13 years old, but they sent a 13-year-old cop and said, and they arrested him. Married, wife at home pregnant. His wife stayed married after it was all done.
Oh, boy.
Now when I take your book and put this in the contents of what he was doing,
Yeah.
I could see how he did it.
Yeah.
In fact,
sure.
I couldn't figure out how the young girl, how she fell for that. But the way he did it, when he put it all together, it all sounded logical.
Yeah. And that kind of really an interest in somebody else. And it's unusual that it was
specific interest. I mean,
well, that's what makes this case somewhat unusual. Is
Yeah.
there are some smart young ladies that might have been a bit
I'm sure he
put
probably
off.
lost most than others. But if you're,
But if
some
you
girl
use a shotgun approach, you're going to catch one.
Yeah.
At least, and sadly, many more usually.
Mr. Jarvis, how much time we got? 5 minutes? Okay. Give us some pointers. People listening on, let's say you're dating, here's what you got to look for. Let's say you're looking for a job and your boss is doing crap to you, here's what you got to look for. Give us some ideas of stuff.
Here's a very practical suggestion. And this is, many people say, gosh, I really want some practical suggestions early on in a relationship.
The best thing is to read the book.
The best thing is to read the book.
That's right, read the book.
That's right. But, when you first meet somebody, I mean, think about it. You meet at Starbucks, you both sit down. Does the person take their device and put it between the two of you? Is that the first thing they do? What signal does that send? Would you do that at a job interview? Would you go sit down at a job interview and take your iPhone and put it right in front of you in case somebody calls? No way. So too, we look at remember the F stands for focus.
Right.
You can really tell a lot about somebody by their focus. And is it on you? Is it on their iPhone? Is it on the clock? In other words,
so they're feigning focus on you because they're
why?
there.
But if they are, why? Why are they there? And
Well,
sometimes it's
but
the
if they're
first
focusing on their
meeting.
phone, that's the real focus, the phone, meaning they have 5 other people they're looking at doing
Now,
the same thing.
maybe they're a doctor on call and they've got to have that phone there. Or maybe they're like you. Maybe they're a law enforcement officer on duty or at least on call. There are lots of explanations. So certainly
Right.
there's always exceptions to every rule. But the first meeting you have with somebody, which is why it's so much better to have it in person, can be so telling of what they think about you, why they're with you. As time goes on, you look for consistency. I talk about, you got to use a wide-angle lens. It's consistency
That's a
over
good way to say
time
it. Yeah.
and context. And you also have to solicit multiple exposures. In other words, it's important that other people in your world meet somebody new in your life. Because
That's a very good point.
Yeah, they'll give you different. They'll give
Like
you
Dad.
different. Like the
Yeah,
dad, right?
Dad
Exactly.
knows.
And mothers are great for this too, as are siblings. So you also have to look at things like you've got to know what they do when they're not with you. So that's also part of a wide-angle lens. You have to know something about them.
How do you get that information? Do you
Well,
just get online and look, or do you ask
well,
them
you
or
get
what?
online and look. You may
Reverse stalking?
If you get online and look, you may see what they want you to see because they put it there.
Oh, that's true.
Your Facebook page and a LinkedIn profile is populated with what you want other people to see.
If you're a manipulator, it's all orchestrated.
All of us do that. Think about it. I mean, our LinkedIn profiles are like biographies. So this is
Yeah.
this is not there illegitimately. We're not there to manipulate other people in the malevolent sense.
But do you think the people that are this specific and the manipulators, conscious manipulators,
They do that too, and you gave a great example of the guy wrestling the Bengal tiger,
Yeah.
and they do that too, and that's why we need more to work with. So focus is one thing, but you also got to look at lifestyle associations and goals. Once you've looked at all of those things in context, you're in a much better position to gauge whether you're dealing with somebody that is dangerous in some sense or authentically desired.
Would you call that an intellectual process?
Absolutely.
Okay,
You've
so
gotta
make it
take the
intellectual.
time- Got to take the time to actually think through these 4 areas with somebody new. And also, when somebody is making you feel really good, you got to figure out why. Why do you enjoy spending time with them so
Look
much?
internally to yourself.
That's
what
right.
makes you feel good about
Exactly.
that? Interesting.
If we all knew that, we'd be in a much better position to avoid falling for a manipulator in the first place.
Yeah. So
And think about it. When you avoid wasting time on the wrong people, that frees up time to spend with the good people.
how does this cross the line to being dangerous? I mean, what percentage of people you saw in your practice? I mean, I guess
Well,
it's,
I only
it's
saw
criminal.
them when
It's
they
criminal,
were
right?
committing crimes.
So what type of crimes are these manipulators doing? Is it
all of the above. You name it.
rape, robbery, crimes against person,
Economic crimes,
economics,
also
embezzlement?
elder abuse, swindling people out of money, and the list is endless. When somebody, or let's look at it this way, guilty by association sometimes.
Yeah.
I have met people that have gotten into a car with somebody that just pounded 5 beers, but because it's a well-credentialed professional in a 3-piece suit, somehow he must be okay to drive. It is incredible
that's crazy.
how the kinds of people we'll give the benefit of the doubt to
Right.
if they have some of these areas: credibility, power, attractiveness, similarity, familiarity, and the list goes on.
Are people that come before you as criminals all manipulators, or can somebody that got into a crime just had a bad day?
It could be both. Not
Okay.
everybody that commits crimes are manipulators. Sometimes they just, good. I'll put it
Because
this
usually
way.
it's against
Good
somebody
people
else.
make mistakes.
Yeah.
That's right. Good people make mistakes.
Right.
But think about all the people that get behind the wheel of a car when they've had.
No, that's
that's the
true.
one piece of legal advice I'm allowed to give. If you
Yeah.
want to stay out of the drunk tank, don't drive drunk.
Give us your website.
WendyPatrickPhD.com.
And where do you find the book? Amazon or else?
Amazon.
Everywhere.
Hopefully every bookstore near you.
All right, excellent. Wendy, thanks for coming in.
Oh,
It's fascinating.
Thank you for having me.
Can you come back
Good
again?
conversation.
All right,
Absolutely.
very good. All right. Tune in for another exciting episode of Security Guy Radio. Mr. Jarvis, were you manipulated today? A little bit. Okay, very good.
Makes you human.
We have
Gotta read the
achieved
book.
our goal at Security Guy Radio to manipulate you into learning something. Till next Monday, tune in at 7 o'clock and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Tumblr. Oh, I can't remember. Just go to securityguyradio.com. Good night.